attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, so I hope you all can see me. I'm Sean Henderson, and sitting right next to me is Dr. Joe Dituri. Right now we're 30 feet under the ocean in a habitat that Joe's living in to conduct experiments for 100 days, which is a long time. And you're about halfway through right now.
I'm just over halfway through. Oh, and there's a bunch of fish right there.
Behind us.
Right
Perfect
behind
timing.
Cue the fish. Very good.
So I got brought into this just for a little background. I'm the chair of the Southeast section of SNAME, and I'll be in that position for a couple more months before it hands over to Drew Orvieto, who will do a very competent job. And Joe and I are former Navy divers, and then through that network, I got made aware of the work that he was doing here, and because I'm the chair, I was like, you know what, we're going to do some meetings that are really fun and interesting for me as well. So I've got two of my daughters with me, and yesterday we were at Florida Atlantic University doing the design review for the senior design projects.
Nice.
And today we're underwater. Well, they're topside watching on a video camera, and Joe and I are underneath getting ready to conduct this meeting. So what the meeting's going to be about is twofold. So we're going to go into why is Joe down here? What is he actually doing? What's some of the research that he's doing? And he's got a presentation set up on that. And then we're also going to talk about or present on and probably just have a discussion about the actual fact that we're in an underwater habitat right now. So this is pretty cool for me to come up this morning. About 15 minutes ago, I dove down into the water, came up through a moon pool underneath, and immediately for just hygiene and respect, I got to go into the shower and take a shower and then dry off and come into this side of the habitat, which has got a full, you guys can't see it, but there's a nice little kitchen over there and a refrigerator, and we've got this big picturesque, about 3-foot diameter porthole looking out into the lagoon and the fish swimming behind us. And so with that, we're going to talk about maybe some of the Jan Koblik, who was the original designer. He was going to participate with us this morning, but he's very ill, and so he's not able to. So Joe and I are going to handle it, and we might get into some of the
we will get into design characteristics, pressures, volume, temperatures. Oh yeah, I got engineering for y'all.
All right, sweet. and we'll get into what does it take to actually not only design an underwater habitat for human occupancy, but what do we have to do to maintain this? So I guarantee there's a lot of work behind the scenes on making sure that this stays at a high level of readiness. So with that, I'm going to give you a little bio on Joe. So I'm calling him Joe because
we're Navy divers and we can do that.
But Dr. Dituri, he's the director of Undersea Oxygen Clinic. He's an assistant professor in biomedical engineering medicine at the University of South Florida. He's the chair of the Florida chapter of the Explorers Club. He's the executive director of International Board of Undersea Medicine, and he's a former commander with the U.S. Navy Saturation. Well, he's a U.S. Navy Diving Saturation Officer, former commander, retired.
Yep.
With that, Joe, can we go into the presentation?
I'd love to. I'd love to start sharing my screen with you guys if I can do a little turn here and do this. So I am going to, let's see, share my screen with you, and I believe that you can share my screen. Can somebody please just give me an affirmation that you can or cannot see the screen and or me?
We can see the screen and you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Dr. Joe Dituri, also known as Dr. Deep Sea. Thanks for the introduction. I really appreciate it. So I've been down here. I am on day 52 of a 100-day expedition. Thank you. Thank you. He gave me the clap, just so you're wondering. So we're down here in a habitat, and we're down here in an isolated, confined, extreme environment for a period of 100 days. And people keep asking me, why are you going to be under there for 100 days? And the answer is because I can't be under here for 200 days. 200 days is the length of time that it's going to take us to get from here to Mars. On the closest point of approach, the best home and transfer we have is to go to Mars for about 200 days. So before we get in that tin can and get on Earth, we had a pretty successful test yesterday. Elon Musk, I love him. He wants to go to space. We got a couple of engineering things we got to figure out first, right? So I'm a biomedical engineer by trade. That's what my PhD is in, and that's the kind of research that I'm doing. While I'm down here, I'm doing tons of stuff, threefold specific mission orientation things for when I'm down here. The first is outreach to people like you, to get you to understand. You guys more than others know science, technology, engineering, and math careers are cool. You get that. But you also got to understand we can do research in our environment, in situ research. We can be here in this pressurized environment, which is where we are right now, doing the actual research. It's not all about beakers and lab coats and microscopes and magnifying glasses and boring stuff, right? It can be interesting, and if we make it interesting, we can entice the next generation of children to want to join our STEM community and to want to solve problems that we have. And if we give them the problems, they'll be all over it like a bum on a biscuit. Second thing we're doing is I'm coming down here, people are coming down here, and we're talking about their science. So I have PhDs in benthic geology. I have PhDs in ichthyology, fish studies. I have PhDs, shark researchers, marine scientists that come down here and talk about sponges and diseases, and we're doing tests to grow sponges underwater, under pressure, in amino acids. So we're doing all kinds of excellent science down here that's fun associated with that. And when we do that, we get to talk to them out loud, and then they get to educate people on preservation, protection, and rejuvenation in the marine environment. Last and finally, I told you I'm a biomedical researcher, so I saved that best for last. That's my jam. Blood, urine, saliva. We've done it before, doing it during, and continuing on afterwards. Nobody's been exposed to pressure for this long. So pressure at this depth, or at any depth, nobody has been exposed for longer than 73 days. Right now we're on day 52. If it was about the record, I would stay 74 days and go up and see my daughter's graduation from Caltech with a bachelor's in physics. Go Caltech.
Nice.
Right? I'd be going to that, but guess what? I'm not. I'm staying here for 100 days because we need to get to 200 days. It's not about the number. It's not about breaking the record. I couldn't care less. If it wasn't for the science aspect, I would probably just go to the surface right now and then come right back down and alleviate all of this like record-breaking BS. All right, so we're down here doing blood, urine, saliva samples on a regular basis. I'm also doing electrocardiograms, checking my heart on a regular basis, sensing my heart, visualizing my heart. I'm doing electroencephalograms down here. We're checking brainwaves, brainwave activity, what's happening to brainwave activity, delta, theta, alpha, beta, how that changes, what the alpha-theta ratio changes, what the effects of being in an isolated, confined, extreme environment do to a person. We're also doing blood pressure monitoring. We're doing SpO2 testing. We're doing pulmonary function tests because right now, due to Boyle's law, you increase the pressure, you decrease the volume. You have to therefore fill that volume with something else. So as you increase that pressure, here we are in a partial pressure environment of 35% oxygen. Wait a minute, 35% oxygen, what does that do? Lowers the flame threshold for everything, right? Lowers the spontaneous combustion threshold. I can't cook down here. I can get a cup of coffee that's truly lukewarm, and it's kind of horrible, but it's okay because at least I have coffee, right? Stuff like that has to be considered in the design characteristics, and we have to kind of go through this. But I also want to test pulmonary function tests because the alveoli cannot be exposed to greater pressures than 21% oxygen. If you do, you can have a reduction in vital capacity. The reduction in vital capacity is tested via the pulmonary function test. That's why we're doing that. Nobody's ever stayed this long, so we don't know how it's going to go. We don't even know the decompression algorithm. It's 16 third-order partial differential equations in a row that all rely upon one another and phase through one another. So it's a really nice math problem that I keep working. It's like, and there's like 10 people in the world that can work that problem. And, we have computers that are doing it, but you know, it's an overdetermined system, right? So we have an overdetermined system, and we're engineers, and we figure this out, right? We use the cold beer rule, and we go, okay, what would be perfect right here? Cold beer. So we supply the exact right figure, then we back solve, and then we front solve, and then we back solve again. I mean, this is engineering principles, right? Engineering 101. So that's the three parts of this mission: the biomedical engineering, the outreach, and then the visiting scientists. That's basically what we're doing down here, and I'm down here for 100 days. What I wanted to do is introduce you to my habitat. Well, I have George Jetson here, the futuristic view. Here, this thing is supposed to be, and was designed 50 years ago, to be a transportable habitat. It was transportable. The first 12 missions that happened, it happened in Puerto Rico, right? It got towed over there. It got brought over. It got towed back. It got moved from place to place, sunk, brought back up, sunk again, brought back up, sunk again, brought back up. So you get the hint. And this is, to today's date, this is the most sophisticated habitat that is in use currently. There is one other habitat that we know of that is in the Czech Republic. It's very nice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to diss the Czech Republic, but it's kind of small and it doesn't do what we do, right? It doesn't have the capacity to do what we do. The other ones that are out there used to be Sea Lab 1, Sea Lab 2 was cut up. You know, Tektite, the people that were in Cousteau's, Conshelf was an issue, and then Aquarius Reef Base or Atlantis or whatever they call that nowadays, they are no longer out there because they had failed the pressurized test. So let me go over some of the ifs, whats, and what fors here, and I can't for some reason operate that. Let me see. Let's go. Okay, so ostensibly, the way this differs from things like Aquarius is that this is an open bottom bell design. It's a wet pot design. Do you remember when he swam in here, he said, hey, I just came up through the bottom of a moon pool. As you see on the right, there's an entry point with that orange dot there, and that is the moon pool. So that moon pool is always open, which means that this entire habitat is merely pressurized to that depth, right? Specific depth on that today is 23 feet. I'm looking over at the pressure gauge, and it looks like 23 feet today, right? So this habitat's pressurized to that to keep the water level at that point, but that makes it an open bell design, designed 50 years ago. Now, what does the open bell design do for you? If you don't close off the pressure, the delta P, change in pressure between the bottom and the top of this thing, is only really 10 feet. Maybe 15 at the most, but really we're talking about 7 PSI. 7 PSI is a design challenge. It's nothing. This was originally designed with hyperbaric chambers, and these are steel hyperbaric chambers, and this is a 5-inch piece of plexiglass. This was a 300 PSI chamber. It is 20 feet long, 8 feet in diameter. So it's all very built out and built in now, but there are two of these, one on the right side and one on the left side. One's the sleeping quarters. The other is the eating science / common gathering area, right? So while we're down here, you know, like I said, it was meant to be a transportable barge. It was meant to transport everywhere and to do science on the go. So it's really over-designed for 300 PSI and having the ability to delta that. But we used to be able to close the doors and decompress in here. We do not do that anymore. We just stick with that open bottom wet bell design. Okay. Now you can see that we have a couple of changes that we've taken place over the years. So this was the original theorized version of it, and we've improved it just a little bit. The bucket, the air going in and out, and we've been trying to make it better as we go. So this is a visual of the living quarters. So that bottom bunk that you see is a twin size bed. The top bunk, I don't know if you can see me, but I'm 6'1", 220 pounds. I hardly fit in that top bunk. When I say hardly fit, my shoulders come from one side to the other side with maybe an inch or two on either side, and that is it. You do not want to be the guy.
It looks very cozy.
It looks cozy, and it's pretty, and it has strength, but that's, yeah. Liar, pantalones de fuego. Right? Yeah. So it's teeny tiny, but that's okay. I mean, it's better than the one that we have, right? So that right on top right there, if you look right up top here, you can see this escape hatch. This was an escape hatch designed originally when we were not around. When I say we, I was 3. 7 when they designed this thing, right? So it's 50 years old. So that was so that you could bring down a pressurized transfer capsule or personal transfer capsule, boom, click it in, connect, open up that door, open up that hatch on the top, climb out, climb into the personal transfer capsule, seal both of them, and then you could be brought to the surface without having to go dive. So that was the quote-unquote escape hatch. So that was the way it was in the very beginning, and this is basically the room. The room is about half the size of this thing, so each room is about 10 feet, but realistically, it's about 8 feet, 7.5 feet of usable space, and even though it's 8 feet in diameter, there's probably only about 3 feet of usable space, aside for the bed when you can lay down, right? So you can tell it's very, very tight quarters. Next, you have a picture. The glass that you see right there is the glass, the plexiglass that I'm sitting against right now, right? And you are looking the furthest right-hand corner here. That is the refrigerator, and there's a small college dorm-sized refrigerator, and then there's a couple of tables and some seating areas. This doubles also as a sleeping quarters for more people. So remember, on the other side, they have 2 bunks on the top, 2 top bunks and 2 bottom bunks separated by a small pocket door. So basically, visiting scientist on one side, me on the other side. I'm here for 100 days, so I get my own room. If they don't like that, nanny, nanny, boo-boo, I'm sleeping in my room, right? So you notice how we still have that escape hatch on this side because these were designed as sister chambers. If you see right off here to the left, there's a carpeted version of a cover of a manhole, not a manhole, but a cover of a plexiglass porthole that used to be used. This was a recompression chamber. The recompression chamber so that you could look into this thing. There's one on that side as well. There's one on the opposite side. You can almost see it right here at the top, right? So you see that this was designed and dual purpose for it. So if you look right over here at this dolphin that's sticking out, the interesting part is the dolphin is actually there to prevent you from hitting the top of your favorite head when you sit back down on this part right here. So this is the holder for the rack or the bed, because there used to be beds on both sides. So that holder for the bed, if you pull that dolphin off, you can pull the dolphin off, and you look at the inside of it, you have that metal piece. That will brain you. When you sit down there, that'll definitely brain you. So it's just after design analysis, changing it from its intended use purpose to something different. So we have a minor cooking kitchen down here. We get to use low voltage equipment, i.e. a microwave, something that does not draw a lot of power, and it's all checked. It's all on ground fault interrupt. And like I said, we're not allowed to cook. We're not allowed to have a hot pot down here. Not allowed to have a hot plate. So nothing open, no open flame. Obviously, we're in a 35%, 36% environment. That would be on the big long list of good and bad. That would be bad. So this is the moon pool that you came up in, and then we get pizza deliveries here. I personally don't eat pizza. It's just not my jam. But this is how we get stuff in and out of this thing. And you see that they come up, they swim up through the opening, and then they go on to the wet deck. This wet deck is between the 2 chambers, right? And this is how people get in and out of the water. This is where we store our stuff. That box over in this corner is, it's a storage for all of the emergency equipment. And that's basically our entryway. So again, it's an upside down bell. It's basically take a cup, put it in the water, push it all the way down to the bottom of the ocean, and then keep filling it with air continuously. We flow at 30 standard cubic feet per minute. 30 standard cubic feet per minute. When he swam down here, very likely you had an aluminum 80 on, right? Mm-hmm. That is 80 standard cubic feet. That is 80 standard cubic feet. That's basically would last 3 minutes blowing down here. So it's a huge flow rate. Now the volume, we calculated the volume at one point, and we calculated that you could exist in here without CO2 levels rising beyond 1.5 SEV or surface equivalent volume. You could exist in here for a period of 8 days with 2 people. Wow. So yeah, it's doable. So we're way over designed, right? Now in this moon pool, I'll go back. In the moon pool, there is a little suction that basically sets the depth and the pressure for the habitat. So that suction point gets all of the water or air to come out. Why is that suction point right at water level? Well, it's because molecularly carbon dioxide is heavier than air, therefore it will sink, therefore it will pull that carbon dioxide out first. That's theory. Yes, science wins over BS. There's a mixing equation, which is a second order partial differential equation, and CO2 winds up mixing very well. So it really doesn't do exactly it, but it does control the depth. And then that hose comes right out here, and off to the right side of this window that I'm at right now is a very big exhaust of air, right? So like I said, there's little delta P. So I'm at about 25 PSI, but the surrounding sea at the top point of the habitat is only about 20 PSI, or maybe even just a little less. Maybe it's 17 PSI. But really, we're talking about a 7 PSI delta. Now, think about that. You know, bike tires, bicycle tires push, well, the new ones have probably pushed more, but my bicycle tire when I was growing up was 30 PSI. Right? And that was rubber. So you really don't need a lot, but here we have a 300 PSI cylinder and a 5-inch, a 5-inch acrylic portal. So realistically, there's not a lot of pressure issues going on. Now, you put steel in the water, there is certainly corrosion issues, right? So what we do is all around this habitat, we have sacrificial anodes, as you guys know, zinc tabs everywhere, and they decay first, they corrode first. It's just what we do in pressure systems. Dehumidification. When we have, so we have air conditioning in here. Its purpose is not necessarily to condition the air. The whole purpose is to dehydrate, right? Okay. That's the whole purpose of an air conditioner, and it makes it feel cooler, right? But you're dehydrating the air because you're in a 100% humid environment, open bottom bell, right? Here's that design. 3 weeks ago, the air conditioning failed in here. And, you know, when you say, well, it really doesn't condition the air, it's pretty miserable without air conditioning in here. So not so nice. And then just 5 days ago, we had an electrical power outage on the island. There was the midst of a storm, and it blew a transformer, and the entire island was without power. Wow. So this place was without power, and that stunk as well. But what we had to do, logistical nightmare being said, we brought down an air conditioner. When I say we, they, the people on the surface did. They swam down an air conditioning unit and installed it. And do you know that they don't make air conditioners that are waterproof and that can be submerged in salt water? Yeah, so we had to wrap it in a bag, then wrap it in towels, then wrap it in another bag, then strap a 120-pound weight to it because it was so positive, then drag it down here, but with this thing wrapped around it to get it down here, and then quickly lift it out and into the moon pool. You could just imagine the insanity involved in that, but it's a logistical nightmare, and you have to do what you have to do. So, electrical fire, we talked about this. We are compressed. It is compressed oxygen and nitrogen because air is continually flowing. We can't have open top stoves. There cannot be electrical spark. Everything that's done needs to be UL approved, everything. You know, there's no cooking, no high voltage stuff, and no hair dryer. I mean, look at my hair. Forget about it. It's like 100 days of bad hair.
You look wonderful, Joe.
Your hair looks great, too. I'm totally joshing him. So, yeah, electrical, it winds up being an issue. So this is a hyperbaric environment. So we are in a hyper more than baric pressure. We're in a high pressure environment. This is akin to treating traumatic brain injury. This is the other thing that I do, which I'm passionate about. I treat traumatic brain injury for our veterans, right? When those guys and gals come out of the military and they got rattled, their cage got rattled, before Vietnam, they used to just die because their helmet wasn't as good and their bulletproof vest and everything wasn't as good. The shock, the concussion, the vehicles that we had weren't as good. But now we have better vehicles, better protection, and what happens is the brain gets rattled. And unfortunately, we have traumatic brain injury and PTSD resulting from that. So I use hyperbaric oxygen therapy to treat that. So like I said, we're doing this because we are going to Mars, right? It's not about the 100-day mission. It's not long enough. It needs to be 200 days. So we need to figure out this isolated, confined, extreme environment stuff, you know? But this is all trade space, right? So let's talk engineering. 64 pounds per cubic foot of air, positive buoyancy. So you need 65 pounds just to keep that down. Times pi r squared times the length. Right. Times the end caps, you know, 4/3 pi r cubed, right? Now all of a sudden you got this huge amount of air and you're like, holy mackerel, I need like 120,000 pounds to keep this thing submerged, just to keep it from moving. Right. So it's all in the trade space, right? And that's what every engineer works with. It's all in the trade space. So, like I said, the best home and transfer that we know of is 6 months. So, you know, we got to work out these medical issues. We got to work out these emergency issues. We got to work out these what can happen in these environments. Do you know that astronauts commonly get decompression sickness? You have to decompress to get into the U.S. spacesuit. U.S. spacesuits are 4.3 psi. Nominally, our transport vehicles and all the vessels that we have in space currently are 14.7 psi.
Right.
So when you have to decompress to get into that, ooh, that's bad. So we notice things like progressive myopia. Were you on submarines?
I was not.
All right, so the submariners know progressive myopia, right? As you're in a confined environment, your vision will shift, right? Your vision is 20/20 because you look 20 feet away, you see an object that's 20 feet away, like it's 20 feet away. But when your visual acuity is like 18, 16 feet, that's how much visual I can see about 16 feet from the point that I'm sitting. Holy mackerel, I'm going to have 16 foot worth of good vision. And it changes. So when those guys get out, the submariners get out, we say, all right, no driving or call for the first 3 days. Right? So progressive myopia. We know about bone density loss from space, right? It's all about osteoblast production and osteoclast increasing, right? So we know that from space. We are doing some things here to mitigate that risk. We know about muscle loss in space. Why? Disuse. So what we're doing down here is we're using these elastic bands, which are similar to the resistance bands that they have on the space station, and we're applying new technology to it, like these pressure cuffs. So these pressure cuffs they affix around the quadricep, the top of the quadricep right at the groin, and the top of the bicep right at the connection where your elbow, where your shoulder meets your pec. So when they're there, they squeeze, they contract, they contract, they expand, they contract, they expand, they reduce the blood flow. By doing such, you increase something called nitric oxide synthase. When you do that, you increase mitochondrial health, and you increase something called nitric oxide synthase, which is a smooth muscle mediator, and it helps to increase muscle. So when you work out with these resistance bands, you can do a better job at maintaining muscle. So we're trying to solve all these problems while we're down here. There's other problems that we still need to solve, engineers, and if you are into this, think about it. Radiation. We are going to fly from here to Mars without a magnetosphere wrapped around us. What if there's a mass coronal ejection?
Right.
What do we do then? Right? What are we going to do for water? What are we going to do for shelf-stable food for 6 months? Hold on. Let me say that a different way. 6 months to get there, a year and a half round trip. What are we going to do for shelf-stable food for a year and a half? We're not taking cows. I'm telling you, it's not happening. We're not bringing cows on the ship. So what are we going to eat? And like Rice Krispies get old after a while, right? And you got to go somewhere. What's going to happen with that? You know, like what goes in must come out. So there's lots of engineering problems to solve, guys and gals. There's a couple of things that we know about hyperbaric medicine in a hyperbaric environment. We increase the length of the telomeres. Telomeres are those little ends on the end of your chromosome that help you replicate that actual cell. We also know that you increase stem cells. Oh, by the way, telomeres increase by between 25 and 33%, depending on whose paper you read. You can increase stem cells anywhere from twice the amount of circulating stem cells to 8 or 10 times, and that's in short periods of time, like 20 days or 5 days. But nobody's ever done 100 days. I suspect that, you know how when you train at altitude, football players will go and they will train at altitude so they get more red blood cells. Right. That's called a compensatory reaction. I believe there's a reverse compensatory reaction, don't know yet, because I'm at a high partial pressure of oxygen environment that I'm going to have less red blood cells when I come out. We're going to see. We're also testing for things like high pressure nervous syndrome and, gosh, the unknowns. People are like, why are you taking EKG and EEG? That's probably not going to change. I'm like, yeah, probably. I like the word probably. It's probably not going to change. Let's hope it doesn't. Right. But hope is not a strategy, right? Right. we plan because we're engineers. This is what we do. So there you go. It is my opinion that exploration is the essential thing that we need to do on this planet. We need to look on this planet for cures, for everything, for information, for knowledge. And the man in the suit, the person in the suit, it's just not replaceable. So that's me in the one atmosphere suit. Yes, I am a one atmosphere suit pilot. There are 35 of them in the Navy. My number is 21. I got the great opportunity to run that. So Here's what I need, engineers, and this is just my last slide, so you can just take a breath that I've talked my ear off. I've talked your ear off for hours. I need about a 4x2 box that is waterproof up to 45 feet. Why? Because sometimes when the pizza gets delivered, it's wet, and it's just really frustrating to eat wet pizza. I'm just telling you, right? I could use some grow lamps down here that won't blow us up, right? I mean, because there's a temperature issue here, but I would really like to grow things. I'd really like to have a whole row of plants that are absorbing carbon dioxide and replacing it with oxygen. I'd like a refrigeration plant and a compressor that's on the surface that we can actually pump down cold air to us. Now, I know those exist, but getting it through the water column here, oh, that's gonna be an engineering challenge. And as you look out this window, there's a refraction and a parallax that goes that is just annoying. And if we could do something to put something on, there's some sort of an engineer out there that can give me a parallax that I can just shift it and then look through that particular point in that direction, and I won't get that off-sided thing. I mean, the fish that swim by this window are like 8 feet long. Well, really, they're only 2 feet long, you know? So it's one of those things. But that's it. That's basically all I have.
Well, I've got a couple questions, and then we'll see if.
You want me to stop sharing, and then we can see faces, or?
Well, I think SNAME headquarters. So they're running this from Washington D.C.
Okay.
And they've kind of suggested that we not do that, just so we don't interrupt the.
No problem.
What we have going right now. So you spoke to a lot of the questions that I was thinking of humidity and carbon dioxide scrubbing and airflow, and I'm assuming that vent that we see right there is, because that's what I was thinking of, is just noise. Because I was like, it seems pretty quiet in here. So just to describe to the audience kind of what's going on down here a little bit is the first thing I know. So Joe's been down here for a long time.
Yeah.
But immediately my voice changed. And so that's one of the main things that I'm noticing right now. It's just that my voice is just a little different pitch, and seems like a little more effort for me to speak, actually.
Right. So why do you think that is?
Density of the
gas, exactly. You're breathing a more dense breathing media, and it's just thicker, so it's a little bit harder to breathe. And that happens to me, and the pulmonary function test showed it. Harder initially, and then your muscles train up, and you come right back to where you were after about 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to stay down here for 2 weeks. I'm going to stay there for about another 30 minutes, and I'm going to keep monitoring you for the next 48 days. I was supposed to bring Joe M&Ms that are flavored peanut butter this morning, and
he had one job.
I couldn't quite make it happen, but we'll get.
That's all right.
We'll get some.
We still love you.
And then so the little fish you see are probably about 2 inches long, but they look like they're about 6 inches long.
These are snappers. Those are these right here are snappers, and those right there are coral-eating parrotfish. Oh goodness.
But one of the other things that I was noticing is it's actually relatively quiet. And so I would have assumed, for having spent a good amount of time in chambers myself, that when we have to change over the air that we're breathing down there just to keep the humidity low, to keep the carbon dioxide low, to just kind of keep it fresher, I guess, that it's pretty loud typically. And in here it's quiet.
Yep.
This is nice.
So we run at 30 standard cubic feet per minute. U.S. Navy chambers run at 12.5 standard cubic feet per minute, but their volume is so much smaller that you hear it. And you know what this is? This is dampening. All this is dampening, and you're really surrounded by water, which dampens that simple harmonic oscillation that we have, so we don't hear any of that.
Okay. And then, so for a 50-year-old chamber that's submerged with people inside, how are you all maintaining this and keeping it? Because I know that somewhere out there there's an underwriter that's kind of got their eyeballs on this, or making sure that. So okay. Well, speak to how do you keep the system within operating condition?
So it's like everything else, in my opinion. You need to know everything about the facility that you're rolling into and everything about what could go wrong and what could go right? So you talk to the experts, you talk to guys like Jan Koblik, who basically designed, built, and went on these expeditions. You talk to guys like Thane, who's the upstairs manager, and you make sure that you're learning from him and his experience and what he's done to move this habitat along. Figure out why these hoses hold, everything is here. And that's the thing. I learn every system all the time, continually. I'm learning. So that's the way I indemnify myself. But, I'm a Reagan era guy, so I trust but verify, right? So in my room, there is a bailout scuba tank, right? And it's not for flooding, like everybody thinks it's flooding. It's truly for contaminated atmosphere, because I'm not worried about flooding because, the laws of pressure are not going to let, physics is not going to let this thing fill up more than halfway, right? Unless there's a hole in the roof, right? If there's a hole in the roof, we're all going to die, but that's a catastrophic event. But it's not going to let this thing fill up more than halfway with pressure. Contaminated atmosphere, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide would be a problem. Any fire that happens down here would be catastrophic, right? But somebody, okay, I'll give you for instance. Somebody brought down a scientific experiment. That scientific experiment had dry ice.
Okay.
What happens when dry ice phases? Does the phase change? Carbon dioxide.
Oh, right.
Shoot! Who was thinking that? And I'm in the moon pool doing my push-ups in the morning, and I'm like, oh, I don't feel so good. I feel really horrible. Oh, my God. And then I came in here, and I was like, why do I feel better in here? Let me go back down there. Oh, I feel horrible again. Oh, carbon dioxide, right? So it's like that kind of thing. When you introduce anything into this enclosed environment, it should be gas-free. It should be checked. You should be thinking about off-gassing. You shouldn't be using petroleum-based products down here because you are in a hyperbaric chamber, right? Oh, I need to glue something to the wall. I'm going to glue this thing to the wall. Let's use this petroleum-based. No, don't do that.
Right.
Your carbon monoxide alarm may go off. And, so.
How are you sleeping? How are you finding that?
Interestingly enough, we're doing sleep studies. Shoot, I have to write up sleep studies. Brian, would you write on the board, write up sleep studies, please? So I am doing sleep studies down here with the Aura Ring. And as you go through the Aura Ring sleep cycles, I get about 2 hours of deep sleep and about an hour and 45 minutes of REM sleep per night. That's restorative sleep. So if you're sleeping 8 hours, ostensibly that's half the time that you are sleeping. You are sleeping in restorative, deep, or REM sleep. That's unheard of. Unheard of. Like when I sleep at home, if I get an hour of deep sleep, I'm totally excited. If I get an hour of REM, I'm totally excited. Most people come down here and they feel that weighted blanket type sleep. So better restorative sleep. Sleeping is amazing down here.
Can you speak to that at all? Like, what do you
Yeah, the theory is, the working theory, mind you, this is the Joe Torre theory. I am not a sleep expert, but Dr. Kurt Parsley is on his way down here. He's one of the people that's going to be talking to me about this. He's a sleep expert, former Navy SEAL, and then medical doctor, and he's going to come down and talk about sleep while we're down here and tell about why that's the case. But I believe it's that we're under 25 PSI, so we are sleeping with like that weighted blanket on us. So we'll see. I don't know what that is, but for whatever reason, the sleep is great, and the dreams, Technicolor.
Interesting.
Amazing.
Interesting.
That's what I've seen, but remember, I have an N of 1.
A what?
An N of 1. There's only one person in this experiment.
Okay. Right.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
Like if I had 400 people, I'd have a much better standing on this. I only have 1.
And then, can you just speak to the red blood cells decreasing just from a biological standpoint?
Right.
That's affecting.
The compensatory reaction for you going to the top of Mount Everest is that you need more red blood cells because you're in a thinner air environment. Red blood cells transport oxygen in your body, and they can only fit 4 molecules of oxygen on every red blood cell. So it's a limiting factor. So in order to get more oxygen when you're in a decreased oxygen environment, because that's what you need, your body has a compensatory reaction. Your inside of your bones, or bone marrow, makes more red blood cells and says, okay, you need more red blood cells to transport so that you are not hypoxic. So we make more. And that is your body's compensating, right? That's your body compensating for living at altitude. I suspect that now that I'm underwater and I'm breathing 36% oxygen, then my body's going, hey, I got plenty of red blood cells. everything's good. I don't need as many red blood cells, right? Because your body wants to be doing the least amount of work that it can possibly do.
Right.
So also, what's happening to metabolism when I'm down here? Here I am ramping up my metabolism. Why? Because I'm living in 36% oxygen. So adenosine diphosphate, adenosine triphosphate, adenosine diphosphate. So we keep going back and forth on this Krebs cycle, but you're burning more because you have more. You have more oxygen, so you're burning more oxygen. So I have, one of the things that we're doing is we're doing body tape and weight, and I'm down 8 pounds. I'm down 10 centimeters on my waist, and I'm down like 6 centimeters on biceps, and like 6 or 8 on my quadricep.
You feel like you're eating the same amount?
I'm eating way more down here than I eat on the surface. Like when I say way more, I'm like, oh my God, I'm eating way more. Yeah. The only thing I'm not doing down here is consuming alcohol. And trust me, I do not consume that much alcohol on the surface. Don't look at me like that.
and then how much cardio or resistance work are you getting?
So zero cardio, that's for sure. You can't do cardio in here. I mean, you could. I can't. It's hard enough folding myself into it. I do yoga while I'm down here to keep the stretching up. And, you know, when you have to duck from hitting your head on the top of that, right? Bad things could happen. You have to duck pretty regularly. You wind up shucking like this, rolling the traps forward and engaging here. So when you start doing this, you have to really concentrate on bringing it back so you get a lot of pain. I got a lot of shoulder pain. I got a lot of back pain. I got a lot of lower back pain from bending and stooping. It's hard, but guess what? We're in an isolated, confined, extreme environment, and, you know, it's all in the trade space. So as we're doing this, we go, geez, you know, we're gonna have to figure out a better way to do this so that we can exist. But then I'll do these resistance bands twice a day with the muscle additive work on it, and I also, for my own personal gain, I do 100 push-ups a day for 100 days so that I can say that I did 10,000 push-ups.
Nice, man. Sweet.
All it is just, you know, whatever. Yeah. Right. So I suspect, due to the fact that I'm in compression, right? I am in compression, it's 25 psi. I'm in compression. I suspect I will be about an inch shorter when I get back to the surface. Well, astronauts, we know they are in tension. Astronauts grow by about an inch or an inch and a half for 6 months on the International Space Station. So, you know, thoughts? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I'd like to, Rachel, I'd like to open it up to see if anyone in the audience has specific questions in regard to the biomedical experiments that Dr. Dituri is conducting down here, or just the nature of the habitat that we're in right now. And I see that there's about 10 people, from what we can see at least, online. And I know we had to do a time change because we were trying to get to accommodate Jan, but so about half of the people are online. So maybe there's maybe a couple more will join here momentarily. But can you field any questions, Rachel, from your side?
Or are there any written up?
Yes, so if you look at the questions,
So we're not. We're not. You're breaking up quite a bit there, and we'll give it here a minute to see if we can. Yeah, I see maybe the icon where it says questions.
Yeah, come on in. We have a couple of visiting students from the local grade school that are rolling through on a video chat. So kids that are here. Hey! Dr. Deep Sea coming at you from the banana crushing depth. Come on down and check it out.
He's going to be planting with us this afternoon.
We are planting.
We're planting.
We're doing something.
So, okay, so here is where.
So I'm going to try and click the question.
You can wash.
Oh, okay.
And then look.
Yeah, there is no way that I can read that.
Wait for you.
Can you? Yeah, because I'm old and blind.
So I see 2 questions here, and we'll go through them. It says, were there any regulatory challenges or concerns that your team had to address before you can start the current experiment?
Yeah, so institutional review board is always required anytime you do human experiments. They have the Committee for the Protection of Human Subjects. You have to go through that kind of stuff. And this is where, here's what really winds up happening. You wind up having to educate a whole bunch of really smart medical doctors about what we're doing in the wild, right? Well, how we're doing our science while we're actually underwater. They're like, you can't do that. Oh my gosh, that's so much oxygen. That's so much carbon dioxide. I'm like, no, scuba divers do this all the time. And I kind of pacify them and walk them off the shelf, you know, so that kind of stuff. Now, realistically, from SNAME perspective,
Yes.
we have zero regulation on open bottom belts. Zero. Because the delta P is so minimal, right? So it's 7 psi delta, and that's in a huge habitat. So 7 psi, I mean, this Gatorade bottle can probably hold about 40 psi, and I know that because I pressurized them. So, you know, or they've come up and reverse pressurized, and I know that they hold. So, yeah, so no regulation on that end.
Okay.
It's an open bottom bell.
Right. And then the second question from Joel MacArthur is, what screening or training did the research team have to complete to ensure there would be a good team dynamic in a confined space for a long period?
Yeah, so the whole team that's down here is Joe Nattori, and he went to Navy Saturation Diver School, did 28 years as a military guy, did all kinds of deployments and so forth and so on. And, you know, he's just the one person. Now, the rest of the team has been fully trained in hyperbaric medicine. There are 10 medical doctors, 2 psychologists, 1 psychiatrist, and we've all worked this problem together. They're all friends of mine, PhDs, MDs, people that are real smart in their areas, and I just gave them the hyperbaric side of it, and then they started throwing stuff at me. So we did things like, you'd be surprised, things like tooth care. Right? Hey, go get class 1 for dental before you go. Hey, we should think about having your appendix removed. Hey, because we think about things that would kill it, right? Things that would kill this. You crack your tooth? Oh, your mission just may be over. You crack your tooth on the way to Mars? So maybe you ought to think about having a dentist. Right now, all of a sudden, the thing is filled with doctors and dentists and lawyers and Indian chiefs. And, you know, before you know it, you have so many people that got to go on this thing to go to Mars that it's crazy. But you see what I'm saying? It's like it's a long, complex problem, but you think it through beforehand.
And so along those lines, I know that you're doing a ton of outreach. And so through social media, I'm watching, and the website itself, I'm watching Joe reach out to so many different schools and scientists and trade societies, like we say SNAME.
Yeah, SNAME.
And so there's an enormous outreach project going on there, which is wonderful. Thank you. That's a great thing for all of us. And then you're also conducting, within your own right, the hyperbaric experiments that you're tracking. But it seems like there's such a from a Navy diver standpoint, there's such a wealth of experience that's occurring here right now. Are you also tied into some of the potentials, like you were speaking to, with submariners or longer range missions, potentially to Mars, where people can access, scientists or engineers or logisticians can access what you experienced here, or is that current, or how are you addressing that?
Oh, 100%. You do things in a vacuum, you don't do things, right? So you see me before you, but there are 100 people, and that number is not exaggerated. There are over 100 people that have been part and parcel to this thing and have helped with us through this. Engineers, logisticians, medical doctors. I mean, there are 10 medical doctors, and like I said, 2 psychologists and 1 psychiatrist. So the psychological and psychosocial testing part, did I mention that I've gone through 19 psychological, psychosocial tests every 3-4 weeks? I continue to go through that. Why? Because you don't want somebody to come down with space sickness or some kind of a sickness when they're in an isolated, confined, extreme environment that they go, hey, your mental clarity is deteriorating and you don't know it. That's why the Committee for the Protection of Human Subjects has given me lots of off-ramps, and there are 2 people that have the authority to cancel this mission on me. And, you know, one is my girlfriend, and the other is a psychologist. So, you know.
Okay. Fascinating.
But, yeah, no, and we're sharing this. So this is going to be written up in a scientific, peer-reviewed scientific paper. And the first place we're going to brief it is at the World Extreme Medicine Conference in Edinburgh, Scotland in November. So if you're interested, go to that. You're like, live a meeting event from SNAME?
Yeah, I won't be the chair then, unfortunately.
Oh, man. That's all right, but we can work it out.
Okay.
No, but go to that conference, and then I intend to be in the write-up that follows that conference. So, yeah, we're going to publish this stuff. It's not to be kept. It's to be shared with God, Jesus, all the disciples, all the apostles. Anybody that wants it, needs it, gets it.
There's a couple saturation divers I've been working with the last couple of years who are older, 40s and 50s. One of them is in the 60s, and he's speaking to some of the effects of having come up through Gulf of Mexico deep saturation diving, and just the physiological long-term effects, ex-military guy like you and I. So he's
aseptic bone necrosis,
lot of
bone
things there.
Yep, lots of issues that come up. Yeah,
higher pressure, but also just confined space.
100%. Yeah, we know that. So, by the way, one thing that we found out, we're doing ear cultures while we're down here. So basically, I'm swabbing my ears, sending it off to be cultured, right? So it was thought that if you didn't do dome burrow solution, which is 5 minutes of vinegar and alcohol in your ear per night, every night, if you didn't do that for 5 minutes and then get rid of it real quick, what would happen is you'd get an ear infection, otitis externa. It turns out that that's absolutely not the truth at all. But that was what we did in the Navy, 5 minutes each side. And what that does is it damages its hepatic membrane.
Oh, wow.
It thins everything out. It makes it more irritated. It wipes away the natural things like the good wax. Like wax is not all bad. Now, you impact wax with a screwdriver and shove it in your ear. Yeah, that's bad. Let's not do that. But natural wax in the right amount is good for you. It lubricates the ear. It helps things in the ear. So when you whisk all that away, you have more problems long term. And those sat divers have all kinds of problems. Right. Turns out you don't have to friggin' do it. We were just doing it prophylactically because we didn't know. But science wins over BS every time. That's why we do the cultures.
Interesting.
For 50-something days, I haven't done it, and 0 otitis externa. 0.
I'm looking forward to reading your report and maybe even taking an extended vacation to Edinburgh with my wife to see it live or something.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, that would be good.
Let's go to Scotland. Bring your kilt.
Right. Long time ago in Fort William, many years ago. So we've got another question from Joel. It says, if you could purpose build a new platform for this current experiment, what is the first design change you would request?
So we started with the wrong end in mind. In my opinion, this is Joe's opinion with the hindsight of 50 years of knowledge, right? So pre-stressed aluminum, right? You see the over-the-road truckers, and they go with their aluminum beds, and they're pre-stressed, right? So they're pre in the concave, and they can get pushed into the convex. If we made this square structure, knowing full well that it's an open bell design, knowing full well that the maximum PSI delta is about 7, we get a thin-walled aluminum crate that's made of pre-stressed aluminum. We can now have a square structure, and we don't have to worry about all the space that's lost, the trade space that's lost. We can do storage shelves without hitting our heads on things, you know? So there's lots of goodness that can come in a newly designed habitat. But if you have the open bottom bell design, you know, you got to know the open bottom bell design and be able to work it. So that would be what I would do, but that's just my opinion. I'm sure there's people smarter than I on this. I mean, I'm a biomedical engineer, and I know a little bit about saturation diving systems and underwater habitats. I sit on that committee, but I'm not the world's expert. you know, there's guys like Jan Koblik that have forgotten more about this kind of stuff than I know. Right. I mean, that cat is smart.
Right. And I think that we're getting here towards an hour, and I'm going to give it a couple more minutes in case thank you for the insightful questions, Joel. I'm going to give it a couple minutes to see if anyone else has a specific question for Dr. Dituri. And I'd also I'm going to take the opportunity. I've got two of my daughters with me, Maggie and Clara, who are patiently sitting topside right now, waiting for their daddy to come back up so we can go play in the ocean here in an hour or two.
Hi, Maggie. Hi, Clara. Your dad's pretty cool, and he's a Navy diver. We like him.
And then also Elizabeth back at home, who missed this trip, but they're doing a great job supporting me. So the well, Joe, I'm going to start closing here,
yeah.
And if you all online, you've got about 2 minutes to if you've got any specific questions for us down here. But I want to thank you a lot. I really appreciate this. I know that you know, so Joe's you know, he's doing a hard thing down here for a long time, and that's about halfway through. So I was trying to think of some way where I could bring you down. I was like, how can I, you know, creatively bring you down like the sun or something like that, so you can see. Oh, there we go. So he's got a fuzzy sun here up on the wall.
One of the little girls heard that I missed the sun, so she sent me that pillow.
Right.
So now it hangs right there. It's really neat.
Nice. And we're all going to benefit from this, from the larger community and all these different areas, from youth being exposed to another dynamic of ocean science, and there's overlap in the work that you're doing at University of South Florida,
yep.
And the work that I was just watching yesterday up at Florida Atlantic University with some of the technology that's being developed by those students. And it's just it's a wonderful thing that, and even my girls up there are getting exposed to, like, wow, I never thought that you know, I see the ocean, but I didn't know that all of this was occurring in it. How fascinating that is, and the different implications that it also has, like you were mentioning, for sleep studies and long range space travel, submariners, how they're dealing with isolation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And if the one thing that I can leave you guys with is, listen, we have explored just a few years ago, before the most recent pressurized vessel that went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, only 3 people had gone to the bottom of the Marianas Trench before. Yeah, sure. Who's that?
I don't know, but organizer would like you to share your webcam.
Yeah.
Maybe it went out or something.
Okay. So before that, only 3 people had been to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, right? 77 man years had been spent in space at that time. So it's like we have explored more in space than we have in our ocean, right? That is a travesty. There are cures for diseases down here. When James Cameron went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, he found a sea lice. That sea lice was 11 inches big, and we pulled the DNA off it, and it was a partial cure for Alzheimer's. There are disease cures down here. Fish have cations in them, which have anti-cancer causing properties in them. There are many things that we can learn from sponges, like a cyclovir comes from derivative of a sponge that's underwater. I mean, there's all kinds of great stuff. Natural antifreezes, barnacles stick really, really, really well. Why are we using super glue? You know, that kind of stuff. So there's lots of stuff that we can learn from the ocean. I'm not talking about harvesting. I'm not talking about raping. I'm talking about sampling. We get these samples of things, and then we can manufacture them on the surface. But we just got to know the disease is here, the cure is here. We're in an enclosed ecosystem, so we just got to find it.
Well, hooyah, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Keep up the good work. And Rachel, I don't see any more questions, so we'll go ahead and conclude this section meeting for the Southeast. Woo! And I'll see you all topside next month at Naval Surface Warfare Center, Panama City. I'm not quite sure if they're going to show us the diving side of it or what. They're still deciding that. But thank you very much, Rachel, for supporting us remotely.
Thanks, Rachel.